All right, everyone, welcome back. So our 2023-2024 season previews continue on today with the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers are always a fun team to talk about because they got the best player in the league, Connor McDavid, obviously. And they're heading into another season where they've made a few runs at the playoffs now. Now it's time for the question, do they have enough experience to go all the way? But regardless, before we ask that question or answer that question, let's take a look at last season. In 22-23, they went 50, 23, and 9 for 109 points. They were 6th in the NHL, and they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights in round 2 of the playoffs in 6 games. Also beat the LA Kings in 6 games prior to that. So, obviously, that was a season where when Jack Campbell was signed to a contract last offseason, it was expected for this year he was going to be the starter. Obviously, that never turned out to be the case. What happened is Stuart Skinner ended up taking the net and was a Calder finalist at the end of the season. And I thought he did a pretty good job until the playoffs when both goalies, both Campbell and Skinner, kind of had both of they had their moments in the playoffs for sure that were bad and were good. And that really, I think, was what killed them. And I think that is what kind of killed them in the playoffs. And then obviously there was other parts that affected that as well. But regardless, they made some moves this offseason, moving out some depth players and bringing in some more depth players. Their departures are Taylor Yamamoto, Klim Kostin, Devin Shore, Ryan Murray, and Nick Bjugstad. So really, honestly, not that hefty of a departures list. Yamamoto was like a buyout candidate for a while. Then he got traded to Detroit, was bought out, and now he's in Seattle. Klim Kostin was a fan favorite at Edmonton for sure. They liked him a lot as their fourth line center, played on that grit line. Obviously, now that he's gone, it's unfortunate, but we'll see how he does with Detroit, I believe. Devin Shore is also gone as well. I said many times Devin Shore is a solid depth player to have on your roster. Ryan Murray, I don't even think played all too much, to be honest with you, if I remember correctly. And then Nick Bjugstad was a trade deadline acquisition, so he wasn't really there for all too long. He's back in Arizona now. Obviously, there too, in your key arrivals, they made some pretty interesting moves. They brought in Connor Brown, Drake Caggiula, Lane Peterson, and they signed Brandon Sutter to a PTO. So we'll start off with Brandon Sutter. Sutter hasn't played in like 2 years. So I'm not really expecting too much out of Sutter if he makes the team. Obviously, if he does make it out of that PTO, he's going to be signed to a 1-year league minimum contract most likely. But really, I wouldn't expect all too much out of him because he's been dealing with COVID issues for the past 2 seasons. So, really, we'll see how he does. But if he does come in, a good depth player to have on your forward core, not terrible there. Connor Brown, I like a lot, a good second-line winger there that will help out the Edmonton Oilers a lot there for sure. Probably playing on that second line with Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is what I expect to happen. Then you got Drake Caggiula, solid depth player, and same with Lane Peterson as well. Overall, they just helped improve their depth mostly. So, yeah, your lineup here for the Edmonton Oilers via the Hockey News. I did not make this, by the way, so don't come at me for it. I think and some of these lines with the Hockey News and the Daily Faceoff, I think they're pretty stupid. I made my Sharks preview yesterday, and I was like, man, these lines are terrible. They were very unrealistic, but I think they did a decent job with Edmonton's lines. I did change up a few things, but regardless, this is your top 6. Your top 6 is Evander Kane, Connor McDavid, and Zach Hyman on the first line. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, and Connor Brown on the second line. So obviously there it is expected that Kane will play a fully healthy season. Hopefully he doesn't have any of those injuries he dealt with last year. Definitely wasn't his fault with the skate play and stuff. But regardless, hopefully he can stay healthy for the full year. Nugent-Hopkins, honestly, Oilers fans won't like this, but I think Nuge falls back down to earth. Honestly, I don't see him getting another 100-point season. Maybe 90. 90's his ceiling. I think he probably gets around 70, 80 points this coming year. I think he has his drop-off. But maybe 90 points is possible. I just can't see him getting to that 100-point plateau again, unless if he has another insane year like he did last year. But I just can't see it. But yeah, Draisaitl, McDavid, not much to say about them. They're great forwards. Connor Brown, again, a good add on that top 6. Even though Brown missed a lot of last season, in fact, pretty much all of last season now that I think about it, still nonetheless a very solid second line guy. And I believe he's on a 1-year contract too. So if he doesn't work out, then he's gone anyway. So it's not that big of a deal there. if you're Edmonton to worry about that. Bottom 6, you got Dylan Holloway, Ryan McLeod, and Warren Fogle. Then you got Raphael Lavoie, Derek Ryan, and Matthias Janmark as your fourth line there. And then for some extra players, you got Drake Kajula, Lane Peterson, and Xavier Borgault as some other guys there too. So Dylan Holloway going to play another season there. We'll see how he does. A solid young forward. Hopefully should have a solid year and have a good year in his development. Raphael Lavoie, the same thing. McLeod, good third liner. Fogle, solid bottom 6 guy. Janmark as well. Derek Ryan too. So overall, still a pretty solid roster. On the bottom 6. I like it a lot more than I did in previous years. I think it's getting better and better each season. So overall, I like this Oilers team right now. And actually, they're actually my cup pick for the next 2 years. If you're following my 10-year Stanley Cup predictions, I have the Oilers winning it this year and next year. So yeah, if you guys lose the next 2 years, you can blame me. But regardless, defense. You got Darnell Nurse and Evan Bouchard as your first pairing. Then you got Matthias Ekholm and Cody Ceci as your second pairing. Brett Kulak and Vincent Desharnais as your third. And then Marcus Niemelainen and Philip Broberg as some extra defenders. Darnell Nurse, Evan Bouchard, great first pairing. Nurse is overpaid, yes, but he isn't a bad player. That's all I'm going to say. He isn't a bad defenseman. He's just overpaid. And really, there's a lot of defensemen in the league that are like that. So, I'm going to be honest. Ekholm and Ceci, obviously there were problems with the blue line last year, but having Ekholm on the team for a full year is definitely going to really help out this Oilers team for sure. And then Kulak and Desharnais. Desharnais is like 6'9" or 6'7", but he's really tall. And then Kulak there too, solid defenseman. But yeah, overall, I like the forward core. I like the defense. The goalies, you got Stuart Skinner, I almost said Jeff Skinner, and Jack Campbell. Then you got Olivier Rodrigue as your third string goalie, as I mentioned. He was the guy we talked about in our prospect pool overview a few weeks ago. So yeah, overall, I like the team. I really do like the team. And people complain about how like the bottom 6 ain't good and the defense ain't good. And honestly, the defense is the biggest X factor. Yes. The defense is what's going to play a big role in this team. Honestly, I just think that with having Ekholm on that roster for a full season is definitely going to help out this team for sure. It's just a matter of time just figuring out, like how far away are they from a Stanley Cup? And that's the biggest question. Are they going to go for a Stanley Cup? Another problem is goaltending. That's been a big factor as well. You could argue that's the biggest X factor. And with Skinner and Campbell, it wasn't expected for Skinner to play this full season. Could that hurt his development? I doubt it. He was developed decently well. And I think, this coming year he could have a really big step in development for Edmonton for sure. And hopefully Campbell will just be a good, backup getting paid $5 million. Or maybe they'll run a tandem. Who knows? It is a new season, so Campbell could have a good year. Goalies are a weird thing to predict. So that's what I always say about goalies. So regardless, that is something there. But again, going back to the biggest question, can they win a Stanley Cup this past year? They've made runs in the playoffs. They've been losing in the first round consistently in the past couple of years. And then the year before, in 2022, they made it to the conference finals. And then after that, in 2023, this past year, they lost in the second round. So they are slowly making that development. It's just a matter of getting over the hump, getting over that second round, third round hump. They're kind of like Carolina. I don't want to say they're exactly like Carolina, but, they make the conference finals, they don't win any games, and then they just can't make it to the conference finals and win whatsoever. So, honestly, that is something I see with Edmonton, but I think they do have the pieces to take another big step. I think it is very possible. Point projections here, per the Hockey News' fantasy guide. You got Connor McDavid with 138 points, Leon Draisaitl with 121 points, Nugent Hopkins with 92 points, Evan Bouchard with 75 points, and Zach Hyman with 66 points. So obviously they're good numbers from those guys. Nuge, again, as I mentioned, could get 90 points, very possible, but I think he gets around 80 to 90, 70, 80, maybe around there. Or 70 to 90 is a better way to say that. But yeah, regardless, I think, good numbers there. I think Nuge, McDavid, and Draisaitl are really going to lead the way, and then it's just going to be a massive gap before all the other guys. But regardless, your sleeper or your bust is Evan Bouchard. Bouchard, when it comes to offensive defensemen, put Evan Bouchard near the top of the list this season. He'll quarterback an historically potent power play and see his ice time eclipse 20 minutes per game for the first time in his career. Yes, he's expected to take that next big step. Has been developing for a while. Definitely should be a first pairing defenseman, especially on that power play with Edmonton this coming year. So yeah, that is your season preview for the Edmonton Oilers. Expected to be a really good team, cup contending team for sure. We'll see how they do come playoff time, because that's when it matters most. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys when we do the St. Louis Blues season preview up next. Adios.